So as I said I might, here's a video with more expanded universe figures. Here's our 1996 Power of the Force line Thrawn with his Issa Lamiri. And as I'm talking about some of these figures, I'll throw in some general toy knowledge that many of you probably already know, just for added context where it's relevant. But I'll try to keep it expanded universe focused. So we got two Thrawns in classic 3.75 inch size. 96 Power of the Force, or the buff line, although he's not a good example of how buff they were. And here's 2009 Legacy Collection Thrawn. You can see he's a bit more detailed. Also with an Issa Lamiri, this one's kind of like a slug. This one has some hands. Both of them, however, inaccurate. Where's the nutrient rack? Jokes aside, that does kind of bug me, although that would not make for an appealing figure. With this Thrawn, 2009 to 2010, he was packed with Talon Karrde, which is, of course, how we say his name. He's obviously, this is the only figure of Talon Karrde, how I said it. I think he looks great. I have some relevant card backs to show here. Yep, this one. Some of these I bought loose, some of these I bought in package and opened. Comics 2-pack. I'll read some of these. And on here we've got some of the other comics packs. Yeah, Tracta. I don't have him. It's been 5 years after the destruction of the second Death Star. The Rebel Alliance has established a new republic, but its existence is threatened by the old Empire. Grand Admiral Thrawn commands the remnants of the Imperial fleet and is putting together a plan that will destroy the new government. Thrawn contacts Talon Karrde, a man with valuable information that Thrawn needs in order for his plan to succeed. And one of these, I have another Thrawn era 2-pack that I'll show you. Here are the comics that came with it, the floppies. This I mentioned in a different video is my #1 Heir to the Empire that's not as valuable as I had briefly thought. But to just go back in history real quick, for some added context for Star Wars figures, there's kind of several main eras, but I'll break it down this way. There's the original Kenner license of the figures that launched with and were produced slightly after the original trilogy, and they have a distinctive, simple look because the tooling and the technology was different back then. And that was a line of toys for Star Wars, A New Hope, Empire, Return of the Jedi, and then a fourth line post-Return of the Jedi called Power of the Force. And then a line of toys for and stylized for the Droids and Ewoks cartoons. And then Kenner stopped producing the figures. And there are unproduced figures from the Droids and Ewok cartoons. And then, late 80s to early 90s, no Star Wars toys. And then in 1995, produced by Hasbro, they came out with Power of the Force. It's known as Power of the Force 2, unofficially, because one of Kenner's lines was called Power of the Force, and this is the buff line of figures. And Hasbro's had the license ever since then and has been producing Star Wars toys. And only 95, 96 were they buff, and they produced a ton of them. And the collector's market bought up so many that now they're not worth anything on the secondhand market. After that came Power of the Jedi, and then Episode 1, and through the years till Disney bought the license and produced them for the sequel movies. Here's an example, this is not real, of a Kenner figure. This is what they look like. This is Hasbro's recent, late 2010s retro line of figures, which I had a card back of here somewhere. Yeah. Says retro, has this fake aging on it so it can't be passed off and disrupt the collector's market. It looks almost exactly the same, but is different in a few ways so that it won't tank the value of the originals. And it had these, very simple tooling, these telescopic lightsabers that come out of their arms. They were later held in their hands around the Return of the Jedi, that actual lightsaber accessories they could hold. It's actually an even more expensive sub-variant of like double telescoping. And when you see these on the secondary market, these are usually all jacked up. But Kenner, original Star Wars, and here's the buff Luke from 1995. Buff Luke Skywalker. These have not aged super well and are, clearly a remnant of 80s movies, even though this is 1995. And this is the huge lightsaber variant. They were initially made with just these extremely absurd lightsabers that they fixed. So you can buy this same Luke. There's variants. Huge lightsaber, not huge lightsaber. But to just give you an idea of how far Luke has come post-buff era, here's a recent Return of the Jedi Luke. This one is good quality. And post-2010, there was the one significant innovation that happened, you probably can't see it, is this like new face printing tech. So you'll see some figures whose bodies and tooling is about consistently as good as this that I have here, but the faces are really simple. And then there's some that are post-face printing tech. Here's a Kenner Vader, not real Kenner. He's got this vinyl cape. It's from the retro collection. And like a proper Vader. And he has been improved upon. And this one's a pain because his helmet always falls off. Retro Boba Fett. A proper, newer Boba Fett. Here's a Kenner Chewie. A New Hope vinyl cape, retro collection, so Kenner. Princess Leia, and these ones I didn't pull their accessories out because they don't hold them well. And here's a newer face printing tech Leia. She's pretty cool. Her hand's like pointing, like she's commanding troops. And you can see they kind of got her scale better. She's smaller, as Carrie Fisher was. Kenner Lando, and a now aged Lando, because he's got these annoying swivel elbows and these puny hips because they're swivel and not ball joints. So this is like a 2009 Lando. So there's a further evolution. And you'll see yellowing sometimes, specifically in white plastic. And this plastic has yellowed for a little bit. That's why it looks different. But to some EU, going back to the 1995 explosion of the EU with the Thrawn trilogy, and we're on the cusp of the special editions, buff line of toys, and an EU character perfectly fit for the buff line of toys, and that's Chewie from Shadows of the Empire. I absolutely love this figure. He's called Snuva, or he's dressed up as a bounty hunter named Snuva, that sounds right. And, he looks like he's from the 80s, as he did in the comic. And I'm just a sucker for this aesthetic. Some of my completist tendencies that carried over into the EU, some of their earlier manifestations in my life were renting the VHS movies of all the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies in the 90s. Some were better than others. Power of the Force, Kyle Katarn, based off of his appearance in Dark Forces. And this is all we had of Kyle Katarn visually at that point because the other games hadn't come out. Later, advancement in toys and his new depiction in the Jedi Knight games gave us this much better Kyle Katarn. This one came in a 2-pack with the Yuzong Vong I showed in the other video. I love this Kyle Katarn. He's a G. What a stud. 1995 and 96, Power of the Force, our only toy of Dash Rendar. And he's not, doesn't really look like Dash Rendar. And it comes with all this ridiculous gear that wasn't necessarily in the game. But that's our only Dash Rendar. Let's see here. I have some card backs. So there's the Power of the Force Luke card back. Here's our Dash Rendar card back. We have some stats here. I wonder if some of those stats are original or from the game. Height, 1.8 meters. Here's our Power of the Force Thrawn card back. And this, there's like a display you can cut out. This is thicker, you can't really see from the video. It's like a mural you can have him stand on. And Dash Rendar card back. There he is from that opening scene from Dark Forces. And this also has a mural. Let's go forward a little bit from Power of the Force, just for evolution of toys context. I have a Ki-Adi-Mundi from the Episode 1 series. This is what I had as a kid that I rebought. This is not mine from childhood. But this is very nostalgic for me, this card back, probably for a lot of people that were getting toys at that age. Interestingly, same with Mace Windu. The lightsabers that they gave them, this is only based on their Episode 1 appearances, and they didn't have their lightsabers yet in any scenes. And so he has a purple lightsaber. And Mace Windu's toy from Episode 1 has a blue lightsaber. And then from the next line after this, I think Plo Koon has a yellowy orange lightsaber, which I actually think is from the Jedi Power Battles game, or vice versa. The toy could have taken it, or Jedi Power Battles could have taken it from the toy. But that's interesting. There, you know, if you're crazy, there could be EU implications for this. Maybe, probably not. Maybe there's a passage in Supernatural Encounters where someone seems to remember Ki-Adi-Mundi having a purple lightsaber. We had a couple Mara Jades. This is the 3.75-inch Black Series Mara Jade, and here is an example of really not fantastic face I was talking about. Her hair is pretty big, too. She's cool, though. I like her knee pads. This is what the 3.75-inch Black Series card backs look like. Here's Mara Jade's. That's the choices of one artwork right there you can see from the second cover. An assassin for Emperor Palpatine. Mara's life changes when she meets and eventually marries Luke Skywalker. Let's show this. There's the Chewbacca card back from Power of the Force. Shadows of the Empire. Going to another 2009 comics pack. This one's pretty cool. We have Luke and Mara from Heir to the Empire. And so that would be what that came with this issue. In the woods with the Vornskers. Mara, if you take her head thing off, I don't want to take it off. She looks more like a ginger than kind of gingery ginger than her hair looks on that other figure, or how she's usually depicted, which is kind of cool. It's a unique look there. I like Luke's chest holster. Mara's blaster is gigantic, so I'd just leave it in the holster. It looks ridiculous. This is not EU, but it's cool. We have a pregnant Padme. They made a figure of that for the Revenge of the Sith line. Anakin, you monster. Showed this already. This is an R7 astromech droid. from Comics pack, we have a Wedge Antilles, and most of the EU characters, specifically in the 2009 Legacy Collection, they only got a figure if they were represented visually, so if they showed up in a comic. So we get an Izard or a Borsk Phalia or a Wedge, but it's their comic counterpart that the toy is being made out of. Except this. Corran shows up in one issue of X-Wing, I think, but that's not what this is from. Here's a Corran horn. Doesn't really look, what does Corran horn look like? But the box says Corran horn. And Whistler, which is great. Green Astromech droid. Now, that's a cool little feature. And I just cut the relevant piece out of the card back. Here's Borsk Phalia. We hate him, but he's interesting and fun to read. Goes out like a champ. Newer Gonk droid. Showed this Kenner Gonk droid. New, more accurate Gonk droid. See if I can. Now, what else we have here? Oh, here's the card backs for Jaina and Jacen. Now, that artwork, is that from the Japanese covers? What's that from? Should have looked that up. Jacen Solo is the son of Han Solo and Leia Organa and is gifted with the ability to communicate with animals. He uses this gift when battling the Yuzong Vong. He calls Amphistaff servants to him, and they encircle him to form protective armor. Jaina Solo is the daughter of Han Solo and Leia Organa Solo. She is strong in the Force, as is her twin brother Jacen, an accomplished pilot with an aptitude for mechanics. She becomes an apprentice to Mara Jade Skywalker. Here's a great one that's just too expensive that I've passed up is Crook Crook. It's got some Rancor food. Poor Ula. You live on in your Tales story. Here's a Kenner Rancor. That's what this Rancor is. There's newer Rancors made by Hasbro with better paint, but I like the Kenner Rancor. And his mouth still works. Oh, I pulled out this Gamorrean. This is a vintage collection Gamorrean, and his helmet doesn't stay on. He comes with like 3 accessories. You got to put one back here, but he's great looking. Here is a droid that's a background droid from the Droids cartoon, but this is not from the Kenner Droids era. This is from 2009 Legacy Collection. And they just wanted to make a new droid, I guess. Okay. Right, here's the Lumaya and Luke card back. Here's the comics card back from that Heir to the Empire, Mara Jade and Luke. Here's an example of the vintage collection card backs and the ones that say Expanded Universe, or it says the property, so Luke, Return of the Jedi. But then we have Empire Strikes Back, Lando. But we have Star Wars The Expanded Universe, Nominor. And what's somewhat noteworthy or interesting is this Shae Vizsla and this Republic Trooper are reissues, and this doesn't have the Legends branding. These were reissued after Disney bought Lucasfilm. we have some Shadows of the Empire, but not from the 1995 Shadows of the Empire. We have 2009 Legacy Collection. We have a Shizor. Shizor's okay. It's a little 90s. He doesn't even stand up because his vinyl cape comes down below his feet, so you have to lean him against something. That happens sometimes with toys. I don't know how it gets past testing. And here is Leia. And nobody. Go on. Okay, my cat's worked up. When you put stuff everywhere, he gets worked up. I'm like, oh, headband Leia, that's awesome. Love headbands. But they clearly cut some corners on this one. Her shoulders aren't painted, the joint. You'll see this sometimes. But look at her feet. I don't know if you can make that out. They wanted to save some money on the tooling and not create mold for feet without shoes. So her feet are shoe tooling, but just painted to look like she has slippers on. So look at her ankles. Force Unleashed. This is actually the 3.75-inch Black Series Galen Marek. Starkiller is the code name of the Force-sensitive Galen Marek, who becomes an apprentice to Darth Vader during the Dark Era of the Galactic Empire. You know, I pulled this out too, the Darth Plagueis card back. This one was cool though. Might be a little edgelord, this design from Force Unleashed, but the evil ending or the bad ending when he wakes up and it looks like this was so cool. They made a toy that, of course they did. They made a bunch of Starkiller toys of all his different costumes. But you can see his claws there and his mask. Here is a personal favorite. Because it's just crazy that they made toys of this. Ibtisam and Niran from the Stackpole X-Wing comic. Star-crossed lovers, or friends. I took them to be romancing. When I pose them, I make them hold hands, because they're friends. You know, when they sit on the shelf. It's hard to get them to stand that way. But Mon Calamari are hilarious. Look at her, look at this helmet. Her big dumb head. Here is the card back for these. There's the Shizor and Leia from Shadows. And here's Niran and Ibtisam. Ibtisam and Niran Vacal seem destined to be enemies. Ibtisam is a Mon Calamari and Vacal is a Quarren, two species that have been foes for centuries, yet an unlikely friendship evolves on a mission to Malrev. Ibtisam finds herself becoming attached to the stoic Niran Vacal, while Niran's initial animosity turns to respect for the courageous Mon Calamari, proving that the bonds of friendship can rise above the blind hostility of the past. I thought I wanted to find that iconic scene. This will be spoilers. So, of Ibtisam. But these toys being based off comics, I just flipped to a couple pages. There's Wedge in his dress uniform, his Rogue Squadron dress uniform. It's a great illustration of Borsk. Izard. And spoilers. They gave us a full-page panel for dramatic delivery. Star-crossed lovers. Heart-wrenching. And okay, I got a couple last bits here I can show you. Here's that card back from the Ventress, and it is the 2003 realistic looking Clone Wars line. Here's an awesome Dirge that I don't have, but he's totally awesome. That Yoda is cool. Speaking of Yoda, I thought, speaking of evolution of toys, I just have a few Yodas to show. So here's Retro Collection, not an actual Kenner figure, but that's a recreation of our Yoda from the Empire Strikes Back Kenner line. And back in the day, the aliens looked more accurate to their screened counterparts, because obviously human facial features are hard to recreate, specifically to look like a specific person. Here is from our Episode 1 line, Jedi Council Yoda in his chair, which makes great for display. It's easy to sit in it. And what I love about this Yoda is this is what Yoda looked like before George Lucas went back and changed him for the DVD release, because Yoda in Episode 1 was originally a puppet, and his puppet looked notably different than the original Empire Strikes Back puppet. And so I have some nostalgia for that specific Yoda look. And then he went and became CGI, and he didn't look so good. The Episode 1 line of toys come with these little readers that you buy an extra accessory and it says some lines or a sound effect. And it's also a stand they can stand on. And that feature actually returned for Force Link 2.0. So this is a more recent Yoda. And under Disney, like 2 decades later, they brought back the same feature, except he's got the technology inside of him, whatever it reads. And the Force Link 2.0 thing says some lines, or I don't know, I never bought it. But so this came out with like the Last Jedi line of toys, but as they usually do, they will reproduce figures from other eras. Here's a cool one. Teak from Battle of Endor. Look at his stupid teeth. Can you see those? It's really accurate. And there was no Battle of Endor line of toys. This is from Teak's appearance in Star Tours, sold at Disney parks before Disney owned the Star Wars license, sold probably at the Star Wars attraction in like a 5-pack. And I figured out, I learned that this was a figure and kept looking online until I could just buy it by itself loose, because I didn't want the other figures in the pack, and the pack is really expensive. What else? Last couple things. Here's other comics, Shadows of the Empire, X-Wing, that came with those comic packs. And then I guess I have this last bit of packaging to show here. Here's Leia from the Headband Leia. Here's some packaging from the Thrawn and Talon card. Comics pack. And here I showed these figures in the last figure video, the Legacy of the Sith 3-pack. I just cut it out. But let me read this part and see if you can catch what's incorrect. The menacing Sith emerge again and again through the centuries, teaching each generation their dark secrets. 1,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, Darth Bane brings the Sith Order back from near extinction in his quest to reclaim their glory. His legacy is carried on by Darth Nihilus, who blights whole worlds in his desire to destroy the Jedi. Darth Maul serves a power-hungry Sith Lord who plots the elimination of the Jedi. I think they got their chronology with Darth Nihilus off there a bit. So Hasbro was making mistakes even before Disney bought the license. That is the most of my figures. I'll make one final video, most likely, at some point, of my Kenner mid-80s Duloc and Ewok figures. They're awesome. They look just like, they're stylized to look like the cartoon. And as far as EU 3.75 figures go, this is most of the significant ones. There's a bunch I don't have. This is maybe 50% of them. There's a bunch. Like there's Rom Mok, Fen Shiza, Sunterfell. I couldn't even list them all. But thank you.